Hey, folks. Today I want to talk about I retired at 62. Why was I looking for work 30 days later? I mean, literally 30 days later, may have been sooner. I was looking for a part time job. Now, that's not how the retirement ads made it look. You've seen them couples on the beaches, dinner parties, travel, everybody smiling and enjoying the fruits of a life planned well. Nobody in those ads is checking their bank account 30 days, wondering how they're going to make this work. Well, that's what they sold me. At least that's how I took it. I had slipped into what I call wishing and dreaming mode. I knew Social Security was coming in, and I figured we'd pay down enough debt. And I told myself it would all work itself out. You know how that goes. You just kind of let the little details slide because you don't have an answer for them. Well, it didn't work itself out. At the end of my first 30 days of so-called retirement, we sat down and started going through the bills. The realization was almost instant. The house wasn't paid off. The credit cards weren't at zero. Now, we didn't know $10,000, but they weren't at zero. The vehicles weren't paid off either. Our hopes for what retirement was supposed to look like could never be met on Social Security alone. Now, I don't want to act like we would be starving. That wasn't the case, but even a reasonably comfortable lifestyle wasn't going to be had on Social Security alone. It wasn't panic. We weren't about to lose the house. But sitting there going through the numbers, it was obvious that the picture in my head and the picture on the kitchen table were two very different things. Retirement had been a date on the calendar for years. You know, you spend decades working toward it, and somewhere in your mind, you figure when the date finally arrives, somehow it all gets easier. Well, what I didn't fully understand was that retirement doesn't change the math. It just changes where the paycheck comes from. And if the bills are bigger than the paycheck, guys, gals, that's your problem to solve. I didn't want my wife to have to work, so I had to come up with a plan. And then there's the fine print that nobody mentions before you get to the plan. If you take Social Security, at least right now, the way it's set up at 62, there's a cap on how much additional income you can earn until you reach full retirement age, which for me was about 65 and a half. So if you go over that cap, Uncle Sam wants some of it back. Now, I don't know about you, but I have no intention of working and then giving Uncle Sam more than the taxes he's already taken. So now you're not just managing a budget. You're juggling. What did I have to do to keep an eye on the income limit and the other eye on the bills? I can't remember his name, Marty Feldman or something. His eyes went like that. I needed income, but I needed flexibility too. And one thing I had imagined about retirement was not having to answer to an alarm clock anymore. Not that I can't get up and make plans, but I didn't want that sucker to go off, and that was the reason my life worked. So whatever I did had to work around my life, not the other way around. I tried a few things. I worked as an insurance inspector, basically just taking photos of the outside of a house mostly. But the best thing I stumbled into was starting a small handyman company. And honestly, it wasn't much of a stumble. I'd been building things my whole life. I grew up in a family that built our own house, started when I was 10 years old. Every phase of construction, we were there from digging the footers on up. And this was, my goodness, back in the 60s. I was involved in all of it. The house took 10 years to complete. Now, obviously, I was 20 at that point. I wasn't there for all of it. But when I was young, I started that. And that put a bug in me because when I went into the Navy, I picked up some extra cash doing small jobs on the side. And when I eventually started my own custom home building business with my brother-in-law, I just filled in all the other skills that remained because I was doing everything. By the time I retired, I had 50 years overall of construction knowledge sitting there doing nothing. The handyman company used all of it. It gave me control over my schedule, flexibility over how much I earned in a given month. I didn't have to take every job. And some tax advantages that really helped stretch things further. You know, everything you buy almost related tools or your vehicle or whatnot can be a tax deduction. This is not tax advice. I worked when I wanted to, and when I didn't want to work, I didn't. I never took a job I didn't want to take. Nobody called me into a meeting. Nobody put me on a schedule. It wasn't the beach from the ads, but it was mine. And looking back, I realized the commercials, they weren't exactly lying. Those people were on the beach and having fun at the dinners they had planned. What they didn't show was the 30 years before they got to the beach. They had made the plans. They didn't show the mortgage that they had paid off or the cars that they drove for 12 years so they could save. They didn't show the vacations they skipped or the discipline it took to get their debt free. That's the part that gets left on the cutting floor of all those ads. Now, we didn't do all that, but we eventually paid off the credit cards, then the vehicles, and started to give us a little bit of breathing room. And this is where I want to slow down for a minute, because this is the part that nobody told me. It's not about how much money you have coming in. It's about how much you owe going out. Retirement doesn't fix your finances. It magnifies them. If you carry debt into retirement, the debt just gets heavier. If you carry good financial habits into retirement, well, then retirement gets a whole lot easier. If your house is paid off, your credit cards are at zero, and your vehicle, all your vehicles are yours, your income requirements drop a ton. You don't need as much coming in because not as much is going out. Now, don't get me wrong. I have nothing against going into retirement with $10 million in the bank if you can do it. But most of us, that's not our situation. Now, one thing that surprised me was that retirement doesn't reduce what you want. You still want to take your wife to dinner. You want to go to the beach. You want to travel. You want to buy birthday presents for your grandkids. You still want to fix things around the house. I own an 80-year-old house. We still want to fix things around it. The only thing that got smaller or reduced was the paycheck. Now, looking back, I think that's what all those retirement commercials left out. And of course, you know why they do, because nobody wants to hear about the hard part. They focused on income coming in versus debt being removed. Save more, invest more, have more in the bank is what they were selling. But what changed my retirement wasn't income. It was getting rid of debt. And if I could sit down with every 55-year-old who's dreaming about retirement, I wouldn't tell them to save another $100,000 first. I'd tell them to get rid of another $100,000 in debt. That made a much bigger difference than I ever imagined. And that's the part that nobody told me. Guys, gals, if you like what you're hearing in this channel, please subscribe to it. I'm trying to think back through all the years of the things, probably mostly the mistakes I've made, and how I can help those probably 50 plus years and older that are now starting to think more seriously about the retirement years. And I want to give back what lessons I've learned, the things that have made my life difficult because of the mistakes that I made. Lord's been good to me. God is good. God is great. I'm a Christian and I want to give back. I want to help. So leave a comment about what your plans for retirement are, how maybe what I've said hit a note with you, or maybe you've got some different ideas. But either way, I'll see you in the next one. God bless.